Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Ceph Tech Talk. I'm joined here with Preetha to talk about the secure token service inside of the Ceph Rados Gateway. So let's go ahead and get started. Preetha, will you please take it away?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Pritha, and I am a developer in the Ceph RGW team at Red Hat. And today I'll be presenting a talk on secure token service in Ceph RGW. So these are the points that I plan to cover today, starting with why STS is needed, and then I'll talk a little bit about AWS STS, and then the remainder of my talk will mainly focus on what has been done in RGW to support STS. So why STS is needed? An application can access S3 resources in RGW using its long-term credentials, which consists of an access key ID and a secret access key. And these credentials are permanent in nature, and often they are embedded inside the application or are there inside a configuration file. And if they get compromised, then it can be a problem. On the other hand, STS or Secure Token Service is a feature in RGW that returns temporary credentials to the user, which automatically expires after some time. And this feature is based on AWS STS. So what is AWS STS? It is a web service in AWS that returns temporary and limited privilege credentials to the user when it requests for it. And it is mainly used for identity federation, cross-account access, and in EC2 applications that run on EC2 servers. So in case of STS in RGW, it returns temporary credentials, which are mainly used for accessing S3 resources in RGW. And to achieve that, we have implemented a subset of STS APIs, primarily related to cross-account access and web identity federation. And the APIs that have been implemented are Assume Role with web identity, and Get Session Token. And since STS depends on IAM, a subset of AWS IAM APIs related to roles, OpenID Connect provider, and IAM policies have also been implemented. And now RGW also supports the authentication of these temporary credentials that are returned by STS, which means that the signature v2 and v4 calculation logic in RGW takes into account the session token which comes in as part of the request in the form of XAMZ security token header. And STS and IAM APIs coexist in the same namespace as S3 APIs, hence all of them can be accessed using the same URI. And STS has been part of Ceph RGW since the Nautilus release. So what are temporary credentials? We know that permanent credentials consist of an access key ID and a secret access key. In addition to these two, temporary credentials also consist of a session token. A session token is encrypted and hence it is opaque to the end user. Now, although it is opaque to the end user, it carries a lot of meaningful information for RGW when a user makes use of the session token to send an S3 request. The authentication information consists of the access key ID and the secret access key, which is used for calculating the signature of the incoming request. And the authorization information mostly contains the user information, the role information, the session policy that is passed along with some of the STS APIs. And all these permissions are evaluated to either authorize a request or to deny that request. So what is a role? A role is an entity which is very important in the STS world, and it is similar to a user, but it doesn't have any permanent credentials attached to it. And it can be assumed by multiple users to get back temporary credentials. A role has two IAM policies associated with it. One is the trust policy and the other is the permission policy. So the trust policy defines who is allowed to assume a role. And in the example shown here, we can see that the principal element is set to a user called tester, and this tester will be allowed to assume the role to which this trust policy is attached. Now, in case we have multiple users who want to assume this role, then this principal element will be an array of all those users. The next policy which is attached to a role is the permission policy, and this describes what a role can or cannot do. So in this example, the permission policy allows all S3 actions on a resource named myBucket. And a role can only provide access to resources which are there in the same tenant under which the role has been created. And currently, we provide support for inline permission policies, which are embedded along with the role, and we do not support managed policies yet. And apart from the REST APIs that can be used for role manipulation, we also have Rados Gateway admin commands that can be used for creating, deleting, updating the role, and then attaching the permission policy, and so on. So after this, I'll be talking about the STS APIs that have been implemented in RGW. The first one being the Assume Role API. And this API provides cross-account access to users. So let's say there's a user A in tenant T1 and there's a user B in tenant T2. And the user B owns certain buckets which the user A wants access to. In this case, we can create a role in tenant T2, and this role can have a permission policy which allows access to the buckets owned by user B. And then user A can assume that role R and start accessing the resources which are owned by user B. So RDW also has another mechanism called bucket policies, which allows cross-account access. But the difference between assume role and bucket policies is that in case of assume role, we can have a single permission policy which can allow or deny access to multiple resources. On the other hand, if we try to achieve this via bucket policies, then we will have to go and attach or update a bucket policy on each of the buckets that the user wants access to. The next API is Assume Role with Web Identity, which provides Web Identity Federation. So in this case, users in an external application can access S3 resources in RGW even without owning any permanent credentials. So the prerequisite here is that the users of the application should have authenticated themselves with an external OpenID Connect or OAuth 2 compliant IDP. And currently, Keycloak has been integrated with RGW as the supported OpenID Connect provider. So this diagram shows a simple flow of how Assume Role with Web Identity works. So the users in the external application authenticate with Keycloak and they get back a web token, which can either be an access token or an ID token. And then the user can start calling Assume Role with Web Identity using that web token, and it can get back temporary credentials, which it can use to make further S3 calls. So before a user can start using assume role with web identity, there are certain one-time steps that a system administrator needs to perform. The first one being that we need to create an OpenID Connect provider in RGW using the URL of the provider, the client ID of the external application that wants to access S3 resources, and the thumbprint list of the IDP. The next step is to create a role with a trust policy, which looks like the example shown here, in which the principal is set to the ARN of the OpenID Connect provider, which was returned as part of the first step of creating the OpenID Connect provider in RGW. And then this trust policy also has a special condition element, which is based on the odd field of the incoming web token. So this example says that only those users will be allowed to assume this role which has the value of the odd field in the web token set to account. And currently, this condition can also be based off the subfield in the incoming web token. The next step is to attach a permission policy to the role, which will define what resources this role provides access to. And after all these steps have been performed, the user can start calling assume role with web identity using the web token that it has received from Keycloak. So internally in RGW, when an assume role with web identity call is received, the first thing to do is to check whether the web token has expired. If it hasn't expired, then we fetch the X5C certificate from the JSON Web Key Set URI, and then using that certificate, the signature is calculated for the incoming JWT. And then the calculated signature is matched with that signature which is there in the JWT itself. And when the signature matches, then the call is successful and temporary credentials are returned back. So prior to using this kind of offline token validation, token introspection URL was being used to validate the incoming web tokens. But then we realized that this doesn't scale well in case there are multiple clients trying to access S3 resources in RGW via STS. And also, it needed us to save the client ID and client secret in the Ceph configuration file, which is not a good practice. So we decided to move to the offline token validation methodology using the X5C certificates of the JWT tokens. So what do we do if we want to restrict permissions further, like based on what is defined on the permission policies for the role? So in accordance with the principle of least privilege, we should start assigning permissions to the role. But the role may have permissions which are generic for all the users that may want to assume it. And on the other hand, the user that is trying to assume a role may want to restrict the permissions further, and that can be done via a session policy that can be passed along with some of the assume role APIs in STS. And the final permission is an intersection of the permission policy which is attached to the role and the session policy which is passed along with the STS APIs. As for example, this role has a permission policy which allows all S3 actions on all resources in the tenant in which the role has been created. But a user that wants to assume this role can restrict the permissions further and specifically state that it wants to access a resource which is named my bucket. So the result of these two policies will be that S3 actions will be allowed only on my bucket for the user which is trying to assume this role. The roles can also be specified in bucket policies. Let's say a system administrator wants to restrict access to all the users which are assuming a role to a particular bucket. Then the role ARN can be specified as a principal in the bucket policy. On the other hand, if the system administrator wants to restrict access to a particular session of the role, then the role session name can be specified as a principal in the bucket policy. User IDs can also be specified in the bucket policy as a principal, and in case of assumed role with web identity, the user ID is based off the subfield in the incoming web token. Now there's a special use case in AWS which says that in case a system administrator wants to allow access only to a particular role and wants to explicitly deny access to any other entity from accessing that bucket, then it can have a policy which denies access to all entities and just allows access to a particular role by using the token AWS user ID in the condition element of that policy. And if it wants to allow access to all users assuming that role, then the value will be role ID : and if it wants to allow access only to a particular session of the role, then the value will be set to role ID : role session name. So RGW now has support for using this condition token in the roles permission policy. So how are all the permissions evaluated? So we initially start off with a default value of deny, and then all the applicable policies, namely the roles permission policy, the session policy, and the bucket policy, they are all evaluated. If there is an explicit deny, then a deny is sent back to the end user. If there is no deny, then we go to check if any of the policies explicitly allow the incoming S3 request. And if there is an allow, then an allow is sent back to the end user. If none of the policies specify an explicit deny or an explicit allow, then the default return value of a deny is sent back to the end user. So what are the advantages of using STS? The credentials that are returned by STS are temporary in nature and automatically expire after some time. These credentials are non-persistent in nature. They are not persisted anywhere. They come in as part of the session token. And it allows us to provide more fine-grained access to S3 resources using the various policies like the roles permission policy, the session policy, etc. We've also extended the concept of STS to something known as STS Lite. So in RGW, in case of external authentication, every S3 call goes to an external IDP for authentication, and the external IDPs are Keystone or LDAP. And STS Lite builds upon the STS API known as GetSessionToken. And the idea is to reduce the load on the external IDPs and hence reduce the latency in serving the S3 requests. So the client issues an initial GetSessionToken to RGW, and RGW authenticates that with the external IDP. And upon successful authentication, it sends back temporary credentials to the client. And then the client can start making use of those temporary credentials and make S3 calls. And these S3 calls are authenticated internally in RGW and are not sent to the external IDP for authentication. So this results in reduction in the load on the external IDP. So STS Lite has been mainly implemented for Keystone, but it can also work with LDAP and also with local users, in which case a user can call a GetSessionToken using its permanent credentials and get back temporary credentials. and it can start accessing S3 resources using those temporary credentials. So there are a number of ongoing work in RGW with respect to STS. The first thing is to create a shadow user for every incoming federated user. And this was done mainly to maintain user stats for every federated user in RGW. And the users are created under their own namespace, which is OIDC for the time being, such that they do not clash with other users like the Keystone users, the LDAP users. And the system administrator need not create these shadow users. They are created automatically under the covers when an assume role with web identity call is made. And the second important work that is ongoing is the support for AWS token issue time as condition element in the roles permission policy. So let's say even these temporary credentials get compromised for some reason, and the system administrator wants to immediately block access to them. So he can do that based on the AWS token issue time token, which will be based off the time at which the web token was issued. Sorry, not the web token, the session token was issued. And it can be attached as the roles permission policy. And then going further, access using tokens that have been issued before a particular time will be denied. And the third important ongoing work is trying to come up with use cases to integrate RGW STS with Kubernetes and Roop. And currently it is in its very initial phases of design and use case mapping. And the future work is is to support other token claims in the condition element in the trust policy of assume role with web identity. So there are many other token claims in the web incoming web token, and we would like to provide support for using them in the condition element while defining a trust policy for the role in case of assume role with web identity. And the next important work that we aim to do is to provide support for session tags. So currently we follow an RBAC model, in which case if a system administrator wants to allow a resource, allow a role to access more resources, then the roles permission policy needs to be updated to add those resources. On the other hand, if we make use of ABAC or access-based access control, attribute-based access control, then tags can be attached to session, principal, and resources. And if the system administrator wants to add more resources under a role, then only tags need to be attached to that new resource, and automatically that resource will come under the purview of that role. So this allows maintaining policies to be much easier. So these are the links to the documentation related to STS upstream, STS, STS Lite, role, and Keycloak. And this brings me to the end of my talk. And now is the time for questions.
All right. Thanks, Preetha. Can you remind me, in case you already mentioned it, which release was this introduced in?
It was introduced in Nautilus.
Okay. So everybody's aware. All right. So let's go ahead and start questions. If you want to enter questions in the chat, you don't want to talk out loud. Otherwise, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Peter. This is Mustafa. In STS Lite scenario, how does the Rhodos gateway know that that the client has been already authenticated, because as far as I see it, the diagram, I mean, there is no communication between the Rados gateway and the Keystone or whatever provider there are.
Yeah, so the get session token call is passed on from RGW to Keystone. And this
So
is
actually
done using its,
yeah.
sorry?
So actually there is a communication between the Rados gateway and the Keystone there as well, right?
Yes, only for get session token call. And then after that, there is no communication. Once they get the temporary credentials, the authentication happens internally. So all this is done starting off with the EC2 credentials that Keystone provides.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, not seeing any questions in chat. So, Rita, I think you covered this topic quite well. And
Thanks, Mike.
so, yeah, thank you so much for contributing content to the Ceph community. We really appreciate it. Do you want to come back on the Ceph Tech Talk later and give us an update on the development of the ongoing work, especially with STS Lite? I'd love to hear from you. And this will be recorded along with the rest of the Ceph Tech Talks. You can find them on the Ceph.io website. And so, yeah, I think that concludes our Ceph Tech Talk. Thanks, Preetha. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.